All right, welcome. I'm gonna take off these glasses. So today in class, first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna make macaroni and cheese. Macaroni and cheese is really simple, but we're doing it because for more than one reason. We're making what we call a bechamel sauce, which is a really classic sauce, French sauce. It's just a cream sauce, but also within that, then we're making a roux, which is a way to thicken your sauce, okay? So it's kind of a threefold thing. We're gonna make a roux first, next we'll work into making the bechamel, and then we'll finish it by producing the macaroni and cheese. Okay, so like I always say, one thing we like to do is have everything ready. So we use the phrase mise en place. Everything's ready here. I've got all my ingredients for the macaroni and cheese. I've got my pans ready to go. I've got my water at a boil. I've got my pan ready to make the cheese sauce, okay? So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the pasta, because the pasta is gonna take a little while to cook. It's gonna take maybe 10 minutes. And so right when the pasta is done, it's gonna be about the time that the cheese sauce will be coming together and we can work them together. And then we're gonna pull the cheese sauce out. We're gonna actually make 3 different flavors. We're gonna do a chipotle flavor, a green chili flavor, and then just a plain one, okay? Just to show you different ways to do these things, all right? So the first thing I do, I got the water on a boil. So what I've done, we have 1 pound of pasta. So this is elbow macaroni, looking really nice and dry there. That's how we want it. We're gonna take either you can take a wood stirrer, you can take a rubber spatula, and remember these spatulas, these ones with the red handle, that means it's high heat. So you're able to put it into the boiling water. It used to be in the old days, you had white handled ones and there'd be about that much of the rubber left on them, okay? But now these ones last a long time. That water's boiling, I'm just gonna add that 1 pound of pasta in there. You're gonna stir it. The reason you wanna stir it, you don't want that sticking to the bottom. If it sticks to the bottom, it can burn, it won't come out very easily when you're straining it later, okay? You're gonna let it sit a bit, and then you're gonna stir it again. You're gonna stir it like 2 or 3 times during the whole process, okay? The whole 10 minutes. That way, if it sticks, you're gonna solve that problem. There, look at that, it was already starting to stick. So I've already done good. Next thing right here, I got the pan started, and what I'm gonna do with it is we're gonna melt some butter. And so the way we make a roux, very, very simple. It's equal amounts of butter and flour. Okay, so remember that. So if you're making a big lot of it, 100 pounds of butter, 100 pounds of flour, okay? We're not making that much today. We're gonna do just about a 1/4 cup of butter. So I'm gonna grab that first. And I know when you're at home, usually when you buy your butter, it comes in a pound box. So this is that, but it's always in little triangular shapes or rectangular shapes. So this, I cut this one up. And so that would be one of your little blocks, okay? So that's a 1/4 cup. And I'm gonna put that into the pan. And see, the pan's pretty warm. I shouldn't have had it quite so hot. That's all right, I'm a chef. I'm just gonna let it cool down. What I can do is I can kind of break that butter up in there and make it melt a little quicker. I'll turn the fire down. That's perfect. So we want it all melted by the time I put the flour in there. So I have my flour here. I have a cup measure. Remember, we use these for dry measurements, and this is for liquid measurement. So with the dry measurement, I don't like to have like 4 different cups, a 1/4 cup, a 1/2 cup. So what I do, I just eyeball it, okay? So I'm just gonna say, that's about a 1/4 cup of flour right there, and that's a 1/4 of the cup there, okay? So what I'll do now is I'm gonna take my whisk, a nice wire whisk. I'm just gonna start whisking that flour in there. And I don't wanna dump it all in there. You wanna do it a little slow. If you dump it all in there, you risk getting a bunch of clumps of flour. And we don't want flour clumps, okay? What we wanna do, a roux is a very nice, smooth, like product, okay? So there we go. You don't see any lumps in there. I'll turn it down. Really important to let it cook a little bit. You don't want to cook it on high heat. but you like to cook it kind of slowly. That cooks the flavor of the flour out of there. And really that's an important thing. If you leave that, if you don't cook it, you're gonna have like this kind of floury flavor to your cheese sauce, okay? So that's why we've done that. And we've got the roux, it's about ready there. We're gonna let it sit for a little bit. The flame's really, really low. We got the pasta cooking. I'm just gonna take out, I know it's not ready, but I'm just gonna show you, if you're gonna test it, take a little bit out, put it on the table, let it sit for a minute, then you can go over and take a little test of it to see if it's cooked all the way through. We're trying to get it to what we call al dente, which means it's still a little bit, there's a little bit of bite to it. And that means it's almost ready to go, because once we cook it, finish it cooking, it's gonna be soft all the way through. Still not ready, so that's perfect. Next thing we're gonna do, so the roux is looking really nice. It's a really kind of a, it's not like liquidy, but it's got a nice little firmness to it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna turn that up a little bit, and this is when we add the milk and the cream, okay? So we're gonna do 4 cups. So you can do, okay, this is a 4-cup measuring cup, but also the vessel that I had the pasta in, that's also 4 cups. 4 cups equals 1 quart. So I'm just gonna do half of this of half and half. Half and half's got a little more butter fat in it. And then we're gonna do whole milk, just all the way up to 4 cups, okay? Plain and simple and easy. Then I bring it back over here, and we're gonna keep using right now the whisk, but in a little bit, we're not gonna use the whisk, and I'll explain why when we get to that part of the show, okay? But right now, we're just whisking it in, making sure we don't get clumps in there, make sure we don't burn our fingers on the stove or on that hot boiling water right below my face, cleaning out my pores. It's like getting a free facial when you work in a kitchen sometimes. All right, so we got a nice, smooth, creamy milk that will start to thicken up. It will thicken very nicely. It won't get really thick. It will just kind of coat the back of a spoon. And when we get it there, that's when we can start adding our cheese. Okay, so what I want to do, once again, I'm going to stir this pasta up, and nothing's sticking, so we are doing very well with our pasta. So if I was being graded today, an A, Mr. Kitus. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the fire down because I have to grate some cheese. If you do it too hot, you're going to scald the milk. Scald the milk on the bottom. If you don't pay any attention, what's going to happen is it's going to burn, and then you're going to get a burnt flavor in your pasta. So those are things you don't want. So let's see, I think for this recipe, it calls for, I think it is 4 cups of cheese. I know it is, I'm just pretending I don't know. And so what I'll do, you don't want to grate this directly into there. It's going to be too hot, it's going to be hard to hold the grater. You could use a Robot-Coupe like we've shown you a lot in class, or we're going to use what we call the box grater, and you've all seen this. It's got all these different, we have the big holes. This is more of a shredding, slicing, smaller holes. We're going to use the big one. It's going to make it easier to slice. So I went ahead and I cut this block into 4 pieces, and we'll just do it right into this bowl, okay? You don't want to do it on the counter because then you got to scrape it off the counter and it falls on the floor. So this is kind of the best way to do it. When you get down to the bottom of these, you need to be very careful with the new box grater. It's going to be a lot sharper. This is an older one, so you don't have to worry too much about cutting yourself. But a newer one, you can really scrape yourself up good. I pulled that trick on my mother years ago, and for a Christmas present, I gave her a new grater kind of like this, and the first thing she did was grate herself. So sorry, Mom. Sorry about that. All right, so, and these bigger pieces here, we're just gonna chop those up when we're done. So you don't have to really force yourself and kind of get too close and shred your fingers up. All right, so we got all that in there. Tap that a couple times. There's gonna be a little bit of cheese hanging out inside. We'll grab these bigger pieces And I'll just slice them up. Pretty simple, right? So what we have now is we started with the roux. Remember that? Which was what? That was butter and flour. Melted butter, we add flour to it. And then to that, we added the milk. And the milk heated up. And what the roux did was it thickened up the milk. And it's not thick like a solid. It's thick to like just cover the back of a spoon when you dip the spoon in there, okay? So that's about ready to go. I'm gonna let it warm up a little more. I'm gonna taste one more of these pieces of pasta, make sure, but I'm pretty sure just by touching I can tell it's ready, okay? So I'll turn the fire off on that. I'll bring over my setup here, which is a big bowl, which is deep enough that when I pour the pasta through there, the water's not gonna touch the pasta, okay? And the reason I'm doing this here is so I don't have to walk over to the kitchen sink and do this, all right? Be really careful if you're doing this. The last thing you wanna do is to knock that bowl over and spill hot water over yourself. It's not a fun thing to have happen, and it could actually injure you quite severely, all right? So we got all of the pasta out of there. Our bechamel sauce. So now it's no longer a roux, but now it's called a bechamel sauce, okay? So that's one of the 5 mother sauces, which is a cream and a bechamel sauce, okay? So these are nicely, see that steam feels so good and it smells really tasty. All right, so now we have the bechamel sauce, but we want to turn it into a cheese sauce. So what do? We're going to add the cheese that we grated. So this is about 4 cups of grated cheese. The sauce is nice and warm now. I'm going to put a spoon in there and see how it coats the back nicely like that. And it's ready to go. You notice I haven't added any salt or pepper to it yet, and I wait to do that until later. The thing with adding cheese into a product like this is the cheese often has a certain amount of salt in it. And so if you add salt now and then add the cheese, you might end up with a product that's too salty, and we don't want that. Okay, so now I'm switching. I'm taking away the whisk, because once you add the cheese will start sticking to the whisk itself, and it just gets really stringy, and it doesn't really work really well. So this is where we're going to add with our either spatula or your wooden spoon. Don't use a metal spoon, only because I don't like the sound of metal on metal. Metal, get it? Oh, my daughters are going to be so embarrassed I did that. Okay, you sprinkle it in a little bit at a time. You don't have to throw it all in there. It's easier just to, if you put it a little bit at a time, then it kind of just melts on its own. If you get a big chunk, it's going to turn in a big blob of cheese, and it's going to take a while to break it down. Okay, but that's a really nice cheese sauce. I would ask the cameraman, but he's not allowed to talk during this. But that's a good looking cheese sauce. Notice I turned off the fire because it's going to just keep melting. See that nice, beautiful thickness there. There's still some whole pieces of cheese in there, but that's okay. We're going to end up baking it some, and so we won't have to worry about it not melting. We're going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese to that. That was about 1/4 cup, I would say. Going to melt that in. Now, if you wanted to get fancy, you don't have to use cheddar cheese or Parmesan. You can use a Gruyere cheese. You could use a smoked cheese. I used to do it for a restaurant. We did a smoked macaroni and cheese. They're really tasty. A friend of mine in LA, he does a lobster mac and cheese. So at this point, he'd add a little bit of lobster broth into it. Gives it a great flavor. Maybe some lobster. Chunks of lobster. What's the other one? I'm trying to think of that word now. Crazy how I forget things. But there's all kinds of flavorings you can add to it, okay? So now my cheese sauce is ready. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to add all of the pasta at one time. If I was just making one flavor of macaroni, I'd put it all, I wouldn't put all the pasta in there. Well, I'm going to put a little bit. I'm going to add some of the cheese sauce. And then if I feel like if I add too much cheese sauce or not enough, I can add more pasta if I need to. Or I can add more cheese sauce if I need to, okay? So you don't want to throw it all together. You kind of, you work into it, all right? So that's a nice looking, and actually that's even better than the one we made this morning. Okay, so that's gonna be our regular macaroni and cheese. So I'm gonna grab a spoon, because remember, we haven't seasoned it yet with any salt or pepper. It's a good thing we didn't, because I think that's just perfect. Yes. All right, so what we can do, so let's suppose we're just doing this for some friends at home. So we're gonna do a little buffet. So you wanna do like a nicer pan to cook it in. So we'll do it in this. If we're doing it for a restaurant and you're just gonna be serving people, you're just gonna grab like something you can put in the oven and beat around and not worrying about it being beat up or anything, okay? So we're gonna do a couple different styles. So the first one, we're gonna do regular. All right, I'm gonna take a little bit of oil. I'm gonna put oil in each of these. Correct. I'm gonna grab a paper towel, or you can always keep just a regular towel like this to rub it in. Make sure you get all the sides. You want to get the sides, you want to get the bottom, you want to get everything, okay? Which we did. All right, so the regular cheese, just regular Mom's mac and cheese. Boom, look at that. So what we'll do now is that's going to go in the oven. That's going to go in for about 15-20 minutes. I'm going to cover it with some panko breadcrumbs, which are a Japanese style breadcrumb. They're nice and crunchy, really tasty. But also I'm going to try something else too. So we're going to pretend we're in a restaurant and we're serving a triplet platter. What do we call it? The platter of the three macaroni appetizer. That's what we're going to call this one. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with our first macaroni. I'm going to put that like this. A little bit of that panko on top of there. And then this, I'm just going to finish with some panko. You put a big, thick crust if you want to, or not so thick. It's kind of really up to you, all right? So that's a good looking one. This will save there. I'll put this in the oven. So the next thing we're going to do is, okay, now we've got our two other flavors. I want to do a green chili, and I want to do a chipotle. For this, earlier I did green chili mixed with chipotle, but since I've got this dish that has 3 compartments, I really have to do 3 different flavors. So I did, once again, I did the pasta. I'm going to add that cheese sauce, a nice gooey cheese sauce. And I'm just going to stir that up. And while I'm stirring, I'm going to grab my green chilies. And these are just green chilies, Hatch green chilies out of a can. I'm going to put about, let's say, a half cup in there. These give such an amazing flavor. I'm going to mix this in. And the thing about green chilies, if you ever go to New Mexico, they are in love with their green chilies down there. And they have them on everything. Any restaurant you go into, there's something with green chilies. If not one thing, there may be 5 or 6 things, okay? So in this case, the green chili is going there. We're going to top it also with a little bit of panko breadcrumbs. But then, so we remember which is which, we will take a little green chili and put it on top. So when it comes out of the oven, you'll know which is which. And also when the waiter or waitress who takes it out to the table, they'll be able to say, this is the green chili, this is the regular, and then the other one will do another thing on top of the other one, okay? So this one, suppose we're using this in a restaurant setting. I'm just going to put that macaroni there. And the reason I'm only doing half the pan is because the other half will be with the chipotle. Okay, so here we go. The last bit of our pasta in there. We're gonna add the rest of most of our cheese. If you have a little more cheese than you think you need, it's okay, save it. You can use that cheese for so many things, okay? You can maybe tomorrow night do a nice nacho thing, right? With cheese sauce on top. Okay, so now we come to our chipotle peppers. Chipotles, it's a smoked jalapeno pepper. Really, really intense flavor, really, really great flavor. One thing you need to make sure is you don't overdo it with this. It's got such intense flavor. If you put too much, it's going to be way too hot for people to eat. But just the right amount, you can't go wrong. Okay, so I think I did the right amount. We'll find out here in a bit. I'm going to stir that up. You see the color is a little darker than when I put it in the pan. You'll see with the green chili, it's not going to look exactly the same. There we go. So darker. We'll do this one also with some panko. And then what could I put on top would be, you know, I think I have some dry parsley here. So on this one, I'll do a shake of dry parsley. So that kind of signifies that's our chipotle, okay? So probably would have smarter put a little piece of jalapeno on top, but I don't have that available. All right, so that's gonna go in the oven. That's gonna bake up. That one's gonna cook a lot quicker than a big pan like this or like the other one we saw. So we're gonna put that in, probably be in about 5 minutes it'll be ready. Here I've put the green chili on this half, and then I'll put just to save space, just because I don't want to do all these dishes today, so I'm doing half and half, okay? So look at that. That actually looks pretty cool like that. So we have the green chili here, and we have the chipotle pasta there. So what I'll do now, I'll take some more panko, and you don't have to do panko. You could do regular, like just the Italian style breadcrumbs. Just make sure they're not flavored, because then you'll get kind of a mixture that you don't really want. Italian and the Mexican flavors don't always go hand in hand. That's perfect. It's going to go in the oven. Most times when I'm baking things like this, especially at home, I put them on a sheet pan just in case there's bubbling over. It doesn't end up in the bottom of your oven, and it turns out to be really delicious, okay? So going to be in the oven 15-20 minutes here, the other one in about 5 minutes, and they'll be ready to eat. Okay, so that's it for this. We'll come back in a bit and show you the finished product. But other than that, boom, we're done. Ta-da!